Hey,
Yep.
welcome back. No, that's not how I want to start this. Hey, so we're at the Over the Moon Roasters in Kingston. We wanted to catch up because I haven't seen this gentleman in a while. And also, I think the occasion was that we got a question on our last video as part of the A Little More Me podcast series. I don't know, do I call it that? It's just so...
I think it's the perfect name.
It is a great name. Yeah.
If I'm being real with you.
Yeah, I did it all myself with no help, collaboratively and creatively from anybody else.
Yes, it was actually a clone of me.
Yeah.
In that first one, I actually was not there.
It
was AI generated. Yeah.
I find AI musicians are a lot easier to deal with than real ones.
Way better.
We might come back to AI because I'm obsessed with AI music. So hold that thought. Okay. It may come up today. We'll see.
All right.
Anyway, we're at the very generous Over the Moon Coffee Roasters, and got Jack here. We got a question in the last video about it was about Jack, but I'm going to just also answer these for myself as well because whatever. It's about where songs come from, and it's about the songwriting process. How do we write songs? Jack's written some awesome ones. How did those happen? And it is a good question, and actually it's one that, not to say too much, or not to toot my own horn here, but I imagine like you, we get that question a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a common question to ask with songwriters is where do your songs come from, and tell us about the writing process. So let's talk about it. So Jack, how do you write a hit song?
I wouldn't know. I've never had a hit song. Next question.
How would you try? Okay, how do you write the shitty songs that you write?
Well, I just listen to your songs and try to copy them.
Inspiration.
Carbon copy them.
Yeah,
so.
That's good.
It is one of the most difficult questions, honestly, that I have to think about on a regular basis. And I actually have some guitar students who I've talked to about this too.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask me, about how I write songs, and there's no clear answer. I'll say that it happens a little bit differently every single time.
Right.
I can get into how it has worked for me, but there's no method to my madness when it comes to writing. So typically I can come up with some sort of chord progression that I am enjoying. Like I'll sit there with the acoustic guitar, 99 times out of 100, not that I've written that many songs, but it starts on an acoustic guitar for me.
For you?
Right, yeah, for me it starts on the acoustic guitar. I don't think I've ever written a song on the electric guitar or any other instrument. It's always the acoustic guitar. So generally, I start with a chord progression that I'm like, ooh, this is like a cool chord change here. And I might start humming some sort of melody that feels good, that maybe goes with it. And if I like that, I immediately will open my voice memo app on my phone and record it.
Ditto. You gotta have the voice. You gotta have the voice memo app.
Voice memo app is huge. I have probably hundreds of voice memos on my phone, unfinished, of just like things that I'm just jamming out by myself, and I'm going, ooh, this is pretty good. I better just record this really fast, just so I don't forget it.
Yeah.
So that's key. And then
you know what? I gotta pause.
Yeah.
Because. Did you see that We Are the World documentary on Netflix?
No.
I can't remember what it's called, but you saw it.
No, but I know what you're talking about. I actually watched the Quincy Jones documentary last night on Netflix, which, of course, he
produced it.
Yeah. Which was such an inspiring documentary.
Yeah,
just on
I should watch that.
So good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And in fact, he goes through his process. He had over 1,000 compositions in his life.
That jerk.
Actual published, between songs, movie scores, all kinds of stuff. Super inspiring.
Well,
Anyway,
he's a legend. In the We Are the World thing was a great scene. There's Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson writing a song together, and they knew they needed to write the song. And they have like all these artists are signing up to be part of this song that they haven't heard yet, right? And they're writing it. And their process is there weren't iPhones back then, but they had a tape deck, and they're going like, they're vocalizing sounds that are not words.
Right.
They haven't written the lyrics.
Yeah.
So they're just trying to find the melody and sort of feel the vocals out, or feel the vowels out, kind of. And then they're playing with different little chord progressions and things and going back and forth. And I thought, man, Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, two of the greatest songwriters in modern history, are doing this the same way that we're doing it with our iPhone voice apps and the little basics like that. That's the process.
Yeah. You have to just feel it out. And I always tell my guitar students that experimentation is so important, to just make sounds. Like, even if it's not anything concrete, just experiment with sounds and make weird sounds on your instrument, of whatever your instrument of choice is. Make some sounds with it. Try out different things, because you might come up with something that is super unique and something that maybe nobody else has thought of before. And that's kind of the hardest part about writing, is coming up with something that's truly original. Because there are only 12 notes, which is a line that Quincy Jones talked about on the documentary. And I mean, you got to figure out what to do with 12 notes that hasn't not been done already, and it's all been done already. You know,
it's all been done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you let go of. I think a person has to let go of thinking what's original, and just think what's sounds good to me.
Right.
That's like it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to write something. You have to come up with something that you want to hear.
Right.
I think that is the ultimate goal for me. I'm coming up with a song is, what do I want to hear right now?
Yeah.
That isn't the Beatles.
Right.
You know, I want to hear something else. What is that? And it's hard. It's really hard to come up with something that isn't, something that's been done already.
So the question that we saw on YouTube, one of the interesting things about it was, hey, do you write, this is the way I read it, do you write for the audience? Do you write a song, put it in front of people, get a response back from them, and that's how you know whether the song is good or not, and then you iterate from there? What role does listeners have in your songwriting process?
I think a little, but when I'm actually in the process of doing it, not much, because again, I still am, I want it to sound good to me.
Right.
I definitely will listen to feedback. I'm very open to feedback from people, and I find it very interesting and educational.
Yeah.
And of course I try to study the greats and like, okay, well, this perfect song that I love, what's so good about it?
Yeah.
What are the elements of this perfect song that I love that make it that way? And how do I write a song like that,
Yeah, and that's hard. I mean, that's where it starts to feel like there's a special sauce to the whole thing. I mean, anybody can write a song. I really believe that. Anybody can write a song. And it's just really difficult to make that song be something that you think is awesome and that other people think is awesome. I don't know. I mean, we've studied everybody, but yet still can't just write it. That's why it's great.
Yeah, and that's something that as songwriters we always are thinking about. Okay, how do I write my next song?
Yeah.
And when is it going to hit me? And sometimes for me, I don't know about you, but for me, I go months without anything hitting me. Like sometimes it's even longer than that. And it starts to I start to wonder, do I have anything left in the tank?
And I may get those text messages on occasion, because listen, it helps to have somebody. I think I use this. You do this for me. It helps to have someone who understands that process to talk to. So when I get the message from Jack, you can edit this if you don't want this shared. When I get the message from Jack saying like, I can't write a song anymore, then, I'm somebody who can say, well, maybe in more words or less, well, maybe you can. Maybe that's not true. We had that happen recently.
Yeah.
And then the very next day, what message did you send me?
I said I wrote a song. And I mean, this was literally within a couple of days.
Yeah.
And because it was on my mind so much over the last 6 months, I've been thinking, okay, well, I wrote a couple of decent songs last year.
Yeah.
Now 24. And I thought at the time, oh man, I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll now. I wrote a couple of good songs. I'm gonna write some more. Nope. So, months and months went by, and I was starting to wonder. And that's why I had that text exchange with you. I was like, man, I don't know. I feel like there's more that I have to say, but I don't know what it is, and I can't find it.
I hope that came through with the espresso machine out there.
So too. We're in a coffee shop.
But I'm assuming it did. My wife hates this. I'm going to say that but I bet you relate. It's like having a baby. I don't need to tell you why my wife would hate me using that metaphor. But
that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, but let me explain. You get no, actually, it gets kind of dirty when you really start to want to explain it. We all know where babies come from, but let's just say you start having this thing that's growing, a concept in this case. It's a concept, and you see it. You're like, that's going to be a song. Like, it's going to become one. It's not yet, but it's forming into a song. And in the beginning, it's thrilling. It's like, oh, cool, I got a new song. It's on the way. But then it doesn't, some songs happen fast, as we know, but a lot of songs don't, right? And then so it's there. And then time goes by. And then at some point, you're sick. You're like, you would cut that thing out of you if you could, because you're like, that song needs to be finished. I'm so sick of holding on. Because it's an obsession.
Yeah.
You have this song and you just don't know what to do with it until it's written. I have times where I go a week, 2 weeks. It's all I think about. In the back of my mind is how to finish that song.
Yeah.
And then finally, again, trying not to be graphic, it exits. And you got it on. You got the song out there, and it is just like you have a new life in front of you. It's like, my creation, there it is. And then it screams at you, slaps you in the face, and runs away.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have postpartum depression.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that I know what that is actually like.
Yes, but we can pretend like we do.
Which, if I had to guess what that is like, that is kind of what I would compare it to also. But again, Addie should hate it. She should hate this.
To all women watching this podcast, we apologize.
Yeah.
But if you have any other questions about your experience, let us know. We'll do a follow-up podcast on that.
Well, because that is what happens to me after I write a song is I am like, oh, okay, now what? What's next? Is there another song waiting, or am I going to go another 6 months without writing another song? And usually it's the 6 months.
Well, that's fine though, right? Because when you force a song, you know how that goes. How's it when you force a song? Can you force a song?
You can try, but it probably won't be very good.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So getting back to before the We Are the World, you were describing how you write a process or how you write a song, and I think we were at the spot where you're pull out the voice memo, voice app, and you're singing into it.
Yeah.
What then?
So usually at that point is when I'm like, okay, well, this needs lyrics. So how do I come up with the lyrics? So usually this is what ends up sometimes forcing me to take a break and have to come back to it. Is if I am not feeling anything lyrically, I will sometimes have to take a break and go back and finish it later.
What does that mean to not feel anything lyrically?
if you can't, if you're trying to think of like, okay, well, what do I want to talk about?
Right.
Because a song is supposed to be about something. It's supposed to, you know, have some sort of content to it. But and sometimes you just can't come up with anything right away. Although I will say there are other times when I just start writing words down, and not necessarily in any sort of order, but I'll just write down like a phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this phrase maybe sounds interesting. And then once I have just one little phrase or line that I like, then I start going, okay, how can I build on this? Or what's like, what I found helpful with my most recent song that I finished the other day was I started, some of the lines were questions. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to ask a question in this line. Well, okay, the obvious next line is, you know, like, is there a response to the question? Or is it a multiple choice question? Or, you know, it's kind of it's a conversation starter. So to me, that's helpful when coming up with lyrics is you want to start a conversation because it has to start somewhere.
Right. I like that because I really think to write good lyrics, you have to have a compelling perspective. Like if I'm a very boring person and I'm like dry toast in a conversation, I think my lyrics are going to be kind of dry toast too. Because I just don't have anything interesting to say. Like, okay, yeah, how's the weather outside? I'm gonna write a song about how it's cloudy. Of course, probably written a few songs about that, but like, maybe that's not my finest point.
That's just setting the scene.
But you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's scene setting. That can't be the whole message. Or like, baby, I love you. Let's go. Mm-hmm. In our genre, anyway, isn't enough.
Yeah.
You have to get somebody to latch on to something. Mm-hmm. Now, what that is could be a simple concept, but it has to be a simple concept delivered really well.
Yeah. One thing I was also going to add to that was just, again, the song I just finished the other day, and the only reason I'm bringing this up again is because that's what's fresh in my mind.
It's on your mind, yeah.
And I actually, one of the questions we get a lot as songwriters is, do you come up with the music or the lyrics first?
Right.
Generally, for me, it's been the music.
Yeah.
This time, however, it was the lyrics.
Yeah.
I just was going about my day, doing, you know, whatever household chores or whatever, and this question popped in my mind, and this one line popped in, and I'm like, oh, that could be something. Mm-hmm. So I got out the pencil and the paper, and I just wrote it down, and I'm like, well, okay, now where do I go from here? And I wrote this entire, I basically wrote the whole song without music. I wrote all of the lyrics, which of course I went back and made little tweaks here and there afterwards to make it fit. But, I wrote out a verse, and I'm like, oh, okay. Then I wrote out another verse, and then I wrote another verse. And then I was thinking about, okay, the arrangement of this song, like how am I going to arrange it? And I don't have a chorus yet. Mm-hmm. And I have kind of, if you look back at my catalog of songs, I kind of have a little bit of a formula.
Well, we all do.
That I kind of stick to.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I need to break out of that. I need
break the repetition?
I need to, yes. I need to do something different this time.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to shake it up.
Yeah.
And that's when I came up with the chorus.
Yeah.
Because I came up with the line of the chorus. I'm like, ooh, okay, that could be something too. Mm-hmm. So then I wrote my chorus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all of this happened, but once I was like in that third verse, I was starting to hum these lyrics. I was like, kind of like reciting them in my mind, thinking along the lines of, okay, how is this going to go to a beat? What's the cadence that I'm going to sing this? You know? Mm-hmm. And then I started to hear it in my brain. before I even got the guitar out.
Yeah.
And then once I had the lyrics pretty much all written out, then I got the guitar out and tried to sing it. And I'm like, it was basically done.
Yeah.
Already.
So there's some things there in that story that sounded simple, but I think if you're an average person thinking, how do I write a song? We're taking for granted some elements. One is that you go into that thought process already understanding song form, of which it is important to know.
Yeah.
You understand chord patterns, you know, kind of how to get from one place to another and what the trends are and what works and what doesn't. You've got a lot of experience playing around with that. And there is and you also know how to play an instrument so that as you're trying this out, you can go back to your preferred instrument and you can see if it works.
Yeah.
All that stuff is, I think, the foundation, and I think always has been. I mean, Mozart was a hell of a piano player. I mean, as well as a songwriter, and you need to be able to express it somewhere, I think, to write a song that's good.
Yeah.
Unless you're using AI, which we will get back to one of these days.
Yeah. That makes me nervous. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Lots to say about that. ASCAP had an email that went out to all their musicians yesterday about it, if you haven't noticed that.
I did not get that email.
About copyright law.
Really?
And yeah, I will say this. The message was that with the U.S. Copyright Office had a ruling, they were talking about that if AI writes a song with no, it cannot be copywritten, right? Is what the thing is. If a human writes a song, we can copyright it. If the AI writes songs, but there's recognizable components of human-written songs, those copyrights are valid on the human-written songs. So it's a really interesting, as that conversation develops, it can write a song, but we won't give it ownership because it's not a human.
Wow.
So this is the beginning of a big conversation.
Yeah, it is. And I got stuff to say about it.
I know. It was like we're trying to hold ourselves back.
Yeah.
I bubbled over a little bit.
The whole thing makes me nervous. That's all I'll say. Is that whole the AI thing makes me incredibly nervous about just the potential for gray area when it comes to all that.
Okay, so I want to dissect some of that too, because you mentioned guitar earlier on. You go back to guitar. One thing that I found is that I get different songs depending on which instrument I use to write it. If I sit down at a piano to write a song, I get a different one than if I sit down at a guitar. When I'm writing for a guitar band, which written a number of songs for a guitar band, I sat at the guitar. But when I didn't need to do that, I might sit at a piano or I might sit at a drum. I love my cajon for writing stuff. It produces a very different kind of song. More recently, I have been really enjoying writing from melody, not from chord, in the shower. The shower is like a place where I can make nonsense sounds and without being judged, and I can just, like, I'm relaxed, I can feel these melodies developing, and then I know what I want out of that melody, and then later on I go back and say, what chord was I trying to get at with that melody? Like, oh, that was what I was feeling in that moment. Let's just not think about the nakedness of the whole experience.
Too late.
So anyway.
That's an interesting point too, because I think you and I have talked about this before because I think you also tend to gravitate towards melody maybe first, which I feel like is probably the best way to come up with a good song is thinking melody. And I saw an interview with a producer lately. I don't remember who it was, but they said something, that research shows that when people first latch on to a song, the first thing they hear in the song is actually not the melody, it's the beat of the song.
We haven't talked about that.
Right.
I firmly believe it.
I agree with that too, but the second is the melody.
Yeah.
Lyrics are actually not usually the first thing that people listen to.
Well, we love a lot of songs with terrible lyrics.
Totally. So that also should free you up to like not take yourself so seriously when it comes to writing lyrics.
True.
Because that's not really what, like, yes, the lyrics are important, but I think that beat, if a song has a strong beat to it, I mean, some of the best songs ever. I mean, like you talk about Michael Jackson, I mean, that Thriller album and Off the Wall too, both of those records were just full of just killer beats. And bass lines, you know, that went with those beats, and that's what you latch onto. And then, of course, the melody is kind of right there underneath that.
Yeah.
Because it's something about that good beat. Like I'm a toe tapper or a head bobber, you know. Like if I hear a song that's got a good beat, it immediately makes me move either my head or my foot, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like I'm already into it.
I agree. I don't think we pay enough attention. Well, I don't think I used to pay enough attention to rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
That's the importance of it. But you know what? People, I mean, it all is very genre specific and it's song specific. I mean, I think what people want most of all is to feel something.
Yeah.
And when you go into writing a song where you have really strong feelings, if you also have the technique that you need to be able to represent those feelings, then, I mean, Jimi Hendrix had a lot of feeling, but also could represent them in such a cool way that it made you feel it. Mm-hmm. Then, if it's not a very rhythmic song, people are going to love it. Enya. I could not figure out when I was a kid why people liked Enya. I still have a hard time with it, honestly.
Yeah.
But I couldn't deny that people loved Enya.
Yeah.
And I couldn't deny that. How could it be how could I call it a bad song if a million people love it?
Right.
Who am I to judge that? Mm-hmm. And I could just tell when they were listening to it, they felt the freedom of going into those big, cheesy synthesizer chords, mm-hmm. and it just like did something for them.
Yeah,
that's a great song. Not much rhythm at all. A lot of emotion though.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there's always exceptions. You know, there's kind of formulas and rules and whatnot, but there's always exceptions to that.
Yeah.
Because if you have a great melody, but maybe the beat doesn't have a strong beat, it's still probably gonna be a good song because that melody is what hooks you in.
Yeah.
As long as there's one of those elements that just immediately hooks you, then chances are pretty good that it's a quality song.
I also might be undervaluing the rhythm in Enya. I mean, sometimes something doesn't sound that good, but then you think about it, you're like, oh, it's pretty tight though where it counts.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
You were talking about using the cajon. And I play the drums too. So the drums also, I've been thinking about the drums. Like I've been like really stuck on this one beat lately on the drums, and I'm just like obsessed with the beat. Like I keep playing the same beat every time I sit down. I'm like, this feels good.
Bum, 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 bum. No,
yeah, not quite. But I'm certain that like I need to write something around that beat because it is stuck in my head, which tells me something. It's like, okay, if this thing is like nagging at me, then I probably ought to make something out of it.
Okay, so if I'm there with you in that song, let's say we find a great beat mm-hmm. and feeling it, where my head goes next in songwriting is like, I want to sing a melody over that beat that says the message. And for me, I'm starting to already think about, I'm going to have the lyric, but the message or the hook mm-hmm. that just delivers that beat. And I'm looking for alignment. Like if the beat is super sexy, then I want to have a sexy melody over the top of that. If it's funny, I want a funny one. And if, angry, I want an angry one. But I need to find that. For me, that is, if we're at point A, find a cool beat that we want to dive into, or find a cool chord progression. You're creating a world you're going to spend a lot of time in, mm-hmm. so you might as well love that world in the beginning. So you find something you love. Let's go back to that beat, and then step B is to find a message and melody that goes with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's before the chords, even for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would see that also. I guess for me, the chords is usually melody is supposed to guide the chord progression, right? And I guess for me, it kind of goes both ways, and I usually end up going chords first, and then when I start coming up with a melody that goes with the chords, sometimes I'll change what the chords were from the beginning, because I'm like, well, I don't like the melody. I don't like the way that the chords are sounding with this melody, but I like the melody a lot. So I change whatever chord I'm playing to fit the melody. So I feel like it kind of has to happen at the same time.
There's a bit of that. I'm also now realizing that we might not have had all this on video.
Oh, really?
Like I did last time.
One of the things that I have found very annoying in the songwriting, startup musician kind of world has been the number of almost predatory services that are offered. You get messages all the time. I mean, there's a lot. I'm not going to name names on websites and things, but there's a bit of a formula. The formula is they understand where musicians are at, and they're like, man, I think you could really do something. You know, sort of that. But I need you to pay me $20, and then we're gonna. They don't say that explicitly, but that's like the path they put you on.
They wait till the end of the presentation to say, "Oh, by the way, that'll be $2,000."
Yeah. So there's a lot of that happening, and I've done some of it. One of the things that I did when I was first starting to write songs is I would submit them to a few services that would give you crowdsourced feedback on the songs themselves. I didn't know if I wrote good songs or not, right? I didn't have that confidence, and I thought, well, I don't trust my family. I don't. You send a song to your friends and family, and they're like, "Oh, it's great, Brian," but then they don't like it. They like you, and they're proud of you, but they don't. It's not their song. So I need to go to people who are like don't know me. So you send it in, and I've got loads of feedback, and I've discovered over the time, I don't do any of that anymore. What I discovered over time was that the feedback was mixed. I still didn't trust it, and it didn't seem thoughtful. And in the end, when I got to the spot where it's like, you know what, actually I do have confidence in my songs, I suddenly lost my appetite for any of it. I no longer needed, I don't really care what people think of my songs anymore. I'm happy with my songs. And some people are going to like them, and some people are not. And I don't need to pay $20 for a service to tell me that.
Absolutely.
So I would discourage. I mean, on where I'm at, I would actually discourage people from paying money to get feedback on your song. You're not going to be famous.
What I would say
to my side of that.
What I would say to that too is I wholeheartedly agree. But also, you can, if you really want feedback from your songs, go to an open mic. Go play your songs at an open mic. You'll get feedback.
Yeah.
If that's what you're looking for. You know, like for me, I play out quite a bit, so I do get feedback quite often on my songs, and I always find it interesting. You know, people don't generally come up to you and say, you know that song that you said blah blah blah. I really did not like that at all. I did not like that song. They don't like people don't go out of their way to tell you that you suck. They go out of their way to tell you that they like something, which is nice.
If they do.
Right. Or they just, if they don't like it, they just will not say anything to you. But ultimately, I completely agree. At this point, I don't care. I write the songs just for my own enjoyment. Yes, I do. When I am proud of a song, I do want to share it to people because I'm like, hey, I think this song is good and I think it might help somebody.
We wrote it for connection.
Yeah. It's not about like getting, you know, critique. I'm not trying to win any contests. I think contests in art is kind of flawed anyway because it's subjective. Like you said, some people are gonna like it, some people aren't gonna like it. It's a wash, really. You know? As long as you like the art that you make, that's all that matters.
I completely agree. I've done some contests, as you know. I've done I have a Christmas song that got like a top 20 in a national Christmas song contest. And what I learned, and I asked them how many people submitted songs, and they were like 10,000. You know what? It was not real. You know, I get to the end of that, and I get some stupid certificate. They put it on a CD, they send to radio stations, never played, and there is no way that they had judges evaluate 10,000 songs. The whole thing in my mind is a scam.
Yeah.
There are some legit song contests that exist in the country. They're very few, very hard to win, and but generally speaking, even ones that are endorsed as a third party like that one, having been to like the finish line on that, I'm here to tell you it's not worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, I have never done a song contest before. I'm too scared to do it.
Eurovision, perhaps?
No, I'm just too, like, I don't want to hear how crappy my song is, you know? For me, the absolute best possible feedback for me is when I go play a gig, and it usually happens at a gig where I'm kind of all over in the corner, and sometimes I play gigs where it's like, there's like a lot of people in the room, but maybe they aren't all paying attention, right? So sometimes those gigs can be frustrating and discouraging, and it's happened numerous times where I will have kind of frustrating experience, and after my set, somebody will come up to me and say, hey, that song that you sang at the end of your set just really touched me, and I loved it. It was so good. It really meant a lot to me, and I can really relate to it. And to me, that absolutely makes it all worth it to me. And that's the best kind of feedback I could possibly ever hope for.
Right. And you know what? Because this is probably a good time to wrap it up for people who are fans of songs, and this isn't fishing for compliments, but like think of your favorite songwriters, especially ones who are maybe not Paul Simon, you know, not super famous. If they've ever written a song that you love, tell them.
Yes,
Tell them why you love it. Send them an email go to their website and find the address they put at the bottom and send them a note saying I love your music and I just want to tell you that. That will be worth more to them than all the gig money that they're getting. It is the best. It is better than spending. We love spending $10 or $25 on the album, but it's better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sincerity. If a song touches you and makes your day, try to communicate that to the other because it will make their day.
If you send a message to Jack, which I'm not like suggesting, I'm just saying this is what would happen. If you do, saying I love your song, this is why, he'll write a new song, I predict, within 2 weeks. Because it like, what you get is so many musicians are just horrible. Like we're just awful people. We're at our best behavior in a podcast. It just sucks. Like he was late to meet me. Like anyway,
Good reason.
it is just like we fall into this like self-loathing despair bucket, and because we're not all that, and we know it in our hearts, but we want to be or whatever. I don't know what's happening, but we fall into that bucket, and then someone says, "No, actually, that song that was amazing and it changed my life," and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna put this knife down now."
Yeah.
And since somebody liked it, now I'm gonna write another one.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. I agree 100% with that sentiment.
So if you want to write a song, follow your heart, learn some technique. Like you do have to study songs, and accept that you're gonna write a whole bunch of absolutely shitty ones before you write any good ones. I like Jack's advice, and to answer the question of the YouTube question, play it out. Do get an audience reaction. The audience doesn't determine whether the song is good, but they do give you valuable feedback if you're looking for it, and do that instead of sending it off to some third-party service.
Yeah. Don't spend money on a song critique. Don't do it.
And write it, and don't let AI take your job. We good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, on that note, thank you for listening, and talk later.